This morning I woke up and I thought to myself, I think I'm gonna go bird watching and then I'm gonna record a Kujou Sara video. And I didn't realize the irony of it until I sat down to record. Hello! I think I misused the word irony there, but you know what I mean, bird lady. Good timing. Thank you, Kujou Sara. I've always found Sara to be one of the most creative designs in Genshin. As a combination quick swap buffer and burst DPS, she allows for a lot of funky things to go on, and while she has a pretty big reputation for feeling bad to play, I kind of think she's fun. So let's just start off. Normals don't matter. Never think about them. For her skill, she teleports backwards, ignore that thing on the ground, and she gets a buff indicated by this little electro aura around her hand, where her next charge shot will spawn this little sigil on the ground that will explode. That sigil does 3 things. Deals damage, generates energy, but only if it dealt damage, obviously. But the third and most important thing is that it gives an attack buff, and that buff is indicated by these little crow feathers around your character. This buff does only last 6 seconds, and that is a downside. That is something that I have complained about a lot, but I do like that it incentivizes a more bursty playstyle, where if you're using Sara on your team, you want her to be buffing units that do most of their damage in a short window. Moving on to her burst, it's a pretty generic big hit followed up by some smaller lightning bolts, but you can see by the crow feathers around her, her burst gives the same buff as her skill. So do the little follow-up lightning bolts. But as for the actual hit itself, this burst has a pretty big multiplier. Let's go to a big enemy to show this off. If the enemy's hitbox is big enough, all the follow-up hits can also hit them. So this burst is a quick and strong source of damage that also has a buff taped onto it. Let me quickly run over the rest of her kit. Ascension 1 is just a cool quality of life, speeds up the charge shot that spawns the sigil. Most people already don't like doing charge shots. I'm one of the few people that does, but this passive makes it bearable. Ascension 2 is kind of cool, but not all that useful. She gives flat energy to the entire party every time one of those sigils hits an enemy. It scales with her energy recharge, which is kind of interesting, but it's a tiny amount of energy, and even with C2, you're gonna max this out at 2 procs a rotation, which is like 4 energy on a good day. Cool, but not worth thinking about. Unfortunately, the meat of her kit is in her constellations. Maybe I've only played Sara at C6, but I don't think their cooldown reduction is very important to her. I only usually do 1 skill every rotation, but even if you wanted to do 2 skill, she does 20-second rotations, and 2 10-second cooldowns can fit within that. C1 just doesn't really do anything. C2 is actually pretty important. That's the thing I told you to ignore earlier. C2 makes it so that using her skill will drop a sigil on the ground, and it does less damage, but it gives you all the same buffs. For people that don't like doing the charge shot, this is a good quality of life because you obviously don't have to do it. You can just press E and then swap out. People that do like doing the charge shot, this is a much more impactful constellation. Because before, between her skill and her burst, she can only buff 2 units. This constellation ups that, so you can buff 3 units every rotation. Or you can use it to stagger your buffs and buff 1 unit more times, which I think is really where Sara shines. I already showed off this team in my recent Yaimiko video, but I think this team is basically exactly what Kujou Sara was made for, where she can buff Yaimiko, she can buff Raiden, and she can buff herself. Without C2, she would only buff 2 units, and that probably just means she wouldn't be buffing herself. And I think that's kind of sad, because Sara's burst damage is part of what makes her so interesting to me. Not only is she a unit that enables your other units to deal a lot of damage, she enables herself to deal a lot of damage. She is very much like Farazan in that regard. Don't get me wrong, Farazan is definitely the better of the two, but I find them both interesting for the same reasons. So the rest of the constellations. Both your talent level constellations are pretty nice. Skill levels increase the buff she gives, burst levels increase the damage she deals. We love to see it. You'll see how Sara's burst works. It starts with 1 big hit in the middle, and then it spawns rings of 6 extra lightning bolts that slowly get larger and larger. This constellation doesn't increase how many bolts are in each ring, it increases how many rings spawn in total. At C3 and below, it's only 4 rings. At C4 and above, it's 6 rings. Those last 2 rings are so spread out they will basically never hit anything. The majority of your burst damage is in that first big hit, and those first 2 circles. Because if your target is large, all of those lightning bolts are likely to hit them. So this constellation does basically nothing. Now on to C6. This constellation does basically everything. Not really everything, but it's what makes Sara a good character in the first place. She needs this to be a compelling buffer. You can use her before C6, but you should only do that if you really, really want to. So why is that? Let's just take a look at her crown skill, because that's where her attack buff is. At level 13, this buff gives 91% of her base attack, which, hey, let's compare it to our other base attack based buffer. At level 13, Bennett's burst gives 119% of his base attack. And if you have burst level 13, you have C5, and that means you have C1, which gives an additional 20% of his base attack. So really this scaling is 139% and not 119. That is more than 50% higher than Sara's buff. On top of that, Bennett is a pyro character. He can use that to activate pyro resonance for an additional 25% attack. And additionally, I'm not using it at the moment, but most teams run Noblesse on him, which is an additional 20% attack. Sara can run Noblesse. It's not impossible. It's not bad for her damage. 20% elemental burst damage and 20% attack is a good enough buff. But the issue comes in her energy needs. If you are bursting on Sara, she needs a lot of energy. She doesn't generate a ton, and she has an 80 cost burst. So what do you do on a character that needs a lot of energy and does most of their damage with their burst? Obviously you go Emblem. Gives you some ER on a baseline and converts your ER into damage. Even if you can get a Noblesse build working on Sara, she's still not as good of an attack buffer as Bennett is. She doesn't bring the pyro resonance, and her base buff is 50% lower. Oh, and if you're wondering about their actual base stats, Sara has 4 more base attack than Bennett. It is higher, not anywhere near high enough to make up for that 50% lower buff. I don't mean to disparage Sara. I just really want to point out that she is a mediocre attack buffer, and she does need this additional crit damage buff to become compelling, which this brings along probably her biggest limitation. Not that she only has a 6-second buff duration, not that she's kinda clunky to play, but that she can only reach her full potential when buffing electro characters, which is why I have this team going on. And that's also partially why I decided to not make this a 101, because I don't have 2 of the characters that she is most relevant with. Sara can be a very strong option for Clorinde and Veresa. Clorinde just has a short field time in general. Her skill only lasts 7.5 seconds, which is only a second and a half more than Sara's buff duration. And because of the big disparity between the duration of her skill and its cooldown, she can leave a lot of time up in her rotations, which can leave Sara a decent amount of time to do her thing. And I guess I should mention this, but that's another one of Sara's weaknesses. I promise I like Sara, and I do think that she's good. I just have to emphasize there are a lot of caveats to her, but her rotations and setups can take a while to do. Between the constant swapping you do in certain teams, and waiting around for the sigil to explode and give you your buff, and doing the charge attack, Sara can make your rotations a little bit slower. Oh wow, I've one-rotated this guy. I didn't think I could do that. This team is maybe better than I thought it was. Clorinde having a fair bit of downtime in her rotations gives more time to Sara for her to do her Sara things. Set up buffs for herself, deal some good burst damage, yada yada. That's also why Raiden is so good with Sara. She, similarly, doesn't take up a lot of time on field. Her burst only lasts 7 seconds, and most of its damage is dealt in the initial hit. She isn't hurt by Sara's short buff duration, and her short on-field time gives more time to Sara for her to on-field. On the flip side, Veresa doesn't really have a set amount of on-field time at all. All of her damage comes through her plunging attacks, which she gets to do instantly just by using a skill. She doesn't go into a state where she can do plunging attacks like Xiao and lose that state when she swaps off field. She just has to have a skill available. So with Veresa, you can get a Sara buff on field for as long as that lasts. When Sara's buff runs out, swap back to her, use another source of buffing, and then go back to Veresa. That might seem a little annoying, but those kind of interactions I actually really like. I mean, I'm making a whole video about Sara, that's not really a surprise. And the same thing basically applies to Keqing. She just needs to have her skill available to get her infusion. Her skill is a 7.5 second cooldown, and Her infusion lasts for 5 seconds. That gives you a tiny little bit of downtime of 2.5 seconds, but keqing is most often run with Thundering Fury, so she gets no downtime at all. You can swap between Sara and keqing to keep the buff up for as long as you need. Guess I'm already here, so I'll just go through the rest of the units. If you've been listening at all, it's probably not a surprise to hear that Cyno is not good with Sara. He has a very long burst duration and he can't swap out of it. It's like the opposite of what makes all the other Electro 5 stars actually good with Sara. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. On the units that snapshot, Lisa, Beidou, and most obviously and importantly Fischl, it's a fine synergy, but it's not really a great one, because while they can snapshot her attack buff, they won't snapshot the crit damage from C6. That will only last for 6 seconds no matter what. We already went over how Sara isn't the best attack buffer, and she kind of needs that crit damage to become a good buffer. So these three, they're certainly usable, but I wouldn't go out of my way to use them with Sara. Probably just go Bennett. Or Yansan. At C0, Yansan buffs a little bit less attack, but with constellations, she buffs a little more. More importantly, she can give damage percent through the scroll set, which can be snapshotted by all these characters. And you know, she's Electro, so no matter what reaction she triggers, she'll always get an electro damage bonus for them. Now finally, no, I haven't forgotten. I was just waiting for impact. Genshin impact. Another pretty good user of Sara is Sethos. He's good for the same reasons that Chlorand and Raiden are. He has pretty short uptime, 8-second burst duration on a 15-second cooldown. He has Sara's buff for most of his burst, and he gives some time for her to do some DPS and quick swap things. He's primarily an EM scaler, so he doesn't care as much about the attack buff, but in turn, he also doesn't care that it's a little bit subpar, and he can make use of the 60% crit damage buff, which is a pretty meaningful amount of the buffs that she brings. Before I look at Sethos, I guess I should explain the rotation going on in the team here. And shout out to that one commenter that pointed out I was being a complete idiot, and the rotation that I spent like an hour looking for in my Yai video was as simple as just using Yai's E at the beginning of the rotation. I spent so long being like, how do I find a rotation where I don't have to go E, 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 Q, E, E, E on Yai? And then someone just said, just do your skill at the beginning of the rotation, and then use your Q and your E's in the middle of the rotation. Shout out to my fans for being smarter than I am. Anyways, rotation here. Start off with your off-field skill setup, Yai and Raiden. Shred with Xilonen, use your burst if you have to heal, use E on Sara, get your first buff on Yai Miko, use your burst if she has it. I've also found if you use your burst here, you'll have to shred res again with Xilonen. If you don't have Yai's burst, you could just catch Sara's buff, do 1 or 2 normal attacks, then go back to Sara. Whenever you swap back to Sara, do her charge attack and wait for it to buff her, do her burst, and then swap into Raiden to catch the buff from Sara's burst, and then you just on-field her until her burst runs out. Ironically enough, even though Sara was kind of custom made for Raiden, I've never really enjoyed using them together because I like to find weird jank things that still work. This is the first team that I really enjoy playing Sara and Raiden together. It's a little insane because this team has all the hallmarks of one that I don't think I would like. Has Raiden and Sara, which I don't really enjoy as a combo all that much. It's a mono element team that just has a res shredder. There's no reactions going on, but the quick swappy nature of it and the burst damage potential, it just itches my brain in the right ways. It's so much fun, and I get to feel like I'm using Sara to her fullest. This is already an hour-long recording. This was not going to be short. I don't know why I thought it was going to be short. I can't make short videos, it's not allowed. Now let's do the Sethos team. What if we just do like hyper carry Sethos? I'm gonna see how I can do with this team. Might not work, but whatever. Alright, see if I can figure out the rotation. I don't even know, do I have enough energy on Sethos? I do. Need to find a spot for Sara in this rotation. I'm doing it again. I'm just making the video longer for no reason. Sure, I got the buff. I believe I did. Oh, I have crow feathers on him. Alright, yeah, that felt a little better. Okay, and after some playing around, I found a rotation that I think works. You'd probably be better swapping out Nahida for a different Dendro, because you can have some difficulty with getting Electro on subsequent rotations. But I do get it sometimes. I actually kind of am a fan of this. Fly Electro with Sara. Spread Res. Oh, come on. I got the energy wrong. Do your Nahida stuff, buff with Sara again, do the same, like, charge shot into... what's it called? Whoa, whoa. Yeah, whoa, whoa, whoa is right. I don't know what happened there. My inputs got eated. I shouldn't be talking while trying to play. Don't have enough energy on Sara, so let's just go straight for Sethos. I shall perhaps do more of this in the future, although Bishulry on Sun are probably going to be better options. I just like how Sara plays. Oh wait, no, I'm not swapping out you. I'm swapping out you. For you. I'm gonna keep it the same. I haven't played Keqing in so freaking long. So just, you know, if my gameplay is garbage, give me a break. Oh, wow. Look at that crit rate. Okay, sure. I could move some stuff around, but that crit rate is just too funny. I'm not ruining that. I don't think I need to heal, but I'm just doing it. Jesus, this is like a lot of fun. Am I gonna start playing Keqing again with Kujou Sara? I really enjoy this. Oh, I think I can get enough energy with this now. I can.
No turning back. Cut to the chase.
I like this better than Sethos. I like that more than Sethos. Oh, sorry, Sethos. Tried to make a Kujou Sara video. Rediscovered my love for Keqing. Am I really going to be excited getting Keqing cons now? That's ridiculous.
Storm the front. Bring it. Letting great names echo. Make yourselves a home. Flash. Incoming. Nowhere to hide.
That's a lot of fun. Oh, that's a lot of fun.
Glory to the Shogun. Cut to the chase.
Oh wait, she gets I'm freaking out. I just remembered. She gets free crit rate. Ooh, 15% crit rate from her burst. So I actually do need to lower my crit rate a little bit. Okay, so let's fix that up. No, I'm still overcapping a tiny bit. I don't know if that can be fixed. Maybe by getting a different goblet? This gives me a tiny bit more crit damage, but I lose some EM. Oh, but I get attack on this, so yeah, let's take that. So I think now... Oh, perfect. Perfect. I have a 0.3% chance to not crit. Kill. Look at her go. Look at her go. Sweetie, you're on the standard banner. I forgot that you were good. All right, you heard it here first, folks. Kujou Sara reinvigorated my love for Keqing. That's gonna be it for today. I intended for this to be a shorter one. I think it actually will be this time. I like that Sethos team and especially this Keqing team because they both really show off Kujou Sara's ability to rotate in weird, unorthodox ways. And maybe I didn't do the best rotations, but the fact that I had to think about it and I had the option to do these weird rotations is what I love so much about Sara. She is a funky unit. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you appreciate your Saras, and have a lovely day.